This is Joe Biden, the resident of the United States. Recently, Biden announced his re-election campaign, and among Americans, there is apprehension. If Biden wins, he will be 82 years old when he begins his second term in office. 2 days after that announcement, Biden participated in a Take Your Child to Work Day event in the Rose Garden of the White House, which didn't do anything to alleviate anyone's concerns.
What was the last country you traveled to?
The last country I've traveled, I'm thinking what's the last one I was in. I've been to 89, I met with 89 heads of state so far. So I'm trying to think, where was the last place I was? It's hard to keep track.
But less than 2 weeks prior, Biden went on a taxpayer-funded family vacation in Ireland. And while visiting his ancestral homeland in County Mayo, Biden held a rally bigger than anything he could ever muster up here in the United States. So you'd think that's something that Biden would remember. But instead, someone had to remind him.
Yeah, you're right, Ireland. That's where it was. How'd you know that?
How did you not know that, Joe? 6 more years, guys.
I have 6 grandchildren, and I'm crazy about them. And I speak to them every single day. Not a joke. Matter of fact, I just got finished going through the calls, and only one of them answered the phone. But at least I got to leave a message.
I speak to them every day, he says. Yet only one of them answered the phone. And I guarantee that their not answering the phone is a daily occurrence. They probably have Joe on a spam blocker list. And I should also point out that Joe Biden actually has 7 grandchildren, not 6. And it's not that Joe Biden is being forgetful, no. It's that he refuses to acknowledge the child that his son Hunter Biden had out of wedlock with a stripper. And the irony is that while Joe Biden was ignoring the existence of his 4-year-old granddaughter, Hunter was appearing in court in Arkansas over child support payments. And Emily Gooden of the Daily Mail asked Karine Jean-Pierre about it.
I wanted to ask about the trial going on in Arkansas with Hunter Biden and the child support. Are the president and first lady monitoring that? And how come they haven't acknowledged the 7th grandchild?
I'm not going to speak to that from here.
Why not?
Go ahead.
And that's a good question. Why not? Because Joe Biden normally won't shut up about how important his dumbass family is to him. Yet old Joe hasn't even met his granddaughter. In fact, Hunter Biden has never met his daughter. And you know that if it was Donald Trump in this scenario, and you substituted Hunter with Eric or Donald Trump Jr., the press wouldn't shut the f*** up about it. Anyway, one of the kids at the event asked where his grandsons and granddaughters live.
One granddaughter lives in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia. One granddaughter lives in New York. One granddaughter lives in Washington. One granddaughter lives in Wilmington, Delaware. And the other grandsons, my grandson lives in California. I left somebody out, didn't I? Anyway.
So old Joe can't remember where all of his grandchildren live, despite speaking to them every day. Sounds about right.
I did say 5, you're right. So let me see, I got 1 in New York, 2 in Philadelphia. There's 3 because I got one granddaughter who is, I don't know. You're confusing me, but they're all around.
Is it 2 or 3 of them who live in Philadelphia? You're confusing me. Stop with these impossible questions. And after all of that, it should be no surprise that 2 days later, during a joint press conference with the president of South Korea, Biden's staff tried to activate easy mode.
Now we're going to take some questions. The first question is from Courtney of the Los Angeles Times.
So it's no secret that the White House Communications Office routinely picks in advance who Joe Biden is supposed to call on. And there has been speculation that when this happens, Biden knows what question is going to be asked. Well, it's no longer speculation. 2 photographers from AFP captured in detail what exactly Biden was reading from on the podium. First, it had the pronunciation of LA Times reporter Courtney Subramanian's last name, which Biden would have fucked up, so he didn't even try.
First question from Courtney to Los Angeles Times.
Second, the card contained what was essentially the question that Courtney was going to ask.
Your top economic priority has been to build up U.S. domestic manufacturing in competition with China. But your rules against expanding chip manufacturing in China is hurting South Korean companies that rely heavily on Beijing. Are you damaging a key ally in the competition with China to help your domestic politics ahead of the election?
So you'll notice that the question Courtney asked and the question on the card were both framed around A, domestic microchip manufacturing, and B, if Biden is concerned that it's causing friction with our allies. So the question is, how could the White House anticipate that Courtney would ask specifically about that topic?
So to people who saw that pocket card, can you explain how that ended up there and why the president needed something like that?
It is entirely normal for a president to be briefed on reporters who will be asking questions at a press conference and issues that we expect they might ask about.
Yes, it's normal to prep before a big press conference, but it's another to just so happen to have the exact topic that a specific reporter was going to ask about, printed right after her name on a card. What are the odds?
So, look, we do not have specific questions in advance. That's not something that we do. And in fact, I would point out the questions that was asked was different than what was on the card that you all saw.
To say that the question on the card was different than what was asked is one of the worst attempts of gaslighting that I've seen from the Biden administration. Yes, technically it wasn't the exact wording, but it was essentially the same question. And John Decker of Gray Television wasn't having it.
I'm sorry.
Is it your contention, Kareem?
I'm not taking call.
That the question
Jackie's
that was
not
on
done.
the
Go
so-called
ahead,
cheat
Jackie.
sheet was
Jackie,
not similar
your colleague-
to the
your-
question that was asked at the
Your
press
colleague
conference.
is not
But
done. Go ahead.
It's a very reasonable question.
No,
I'm
but
asking.
I
It's
hear
a
you.
very
Can
reasonable-
you wait your turn? Thank you, John. I appreciate that. I really do.
And John Decker never got his turn to ask because Karine neglected to circle back and call on him. I know you're shocked. Now, when Karine said, "We do not have specific questions in advance, that's not something we do," well, that's not quite accurate. Back in February 2021, the Daily Beast published an article about how the Biden administration's communications office was asking reporters what questions they were going to ask during the White House press briefings. And while one could argue that knowing questions in advance could help the White House give better answers, it also helps the press secretary know who to avoid calling on during the briefing. The press can't really do its job in the briefing room if the White House is picking and choosing the questions they want. One White House correspondent said, "That's not really a free press at all." And for clarity, there are 49 seats in the briefing room, and out of the dozens of reporters that attend the press briefing, the majority of those reporters don't get called on any given day. So again, if Karine knows who is going to ask what, she can avoid them entirely. In the meantime, according to reporting by Michael Shear from the New York Times, Joe Biden, during his first 2 years in office, has given the fewest news conferences since Ronald Reagan and only averages 10 a year.
Is the administration trying to protect the president from our questions? Please, answer that question.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So why the lack of any interaction in a formal setting to have a press conference?
I mean, the president takes shouted questions. I understand, John. I understand. I've dealt with this question about 3 times already. I understand. It is the job of you all to ask this question to me. Totally get that, and that's not a problem at all.
In other words, it's not a problem to point out that Biden barely holds any press conferences, but they're not going to do anything to address it. I mean, come on. The press works for the Biden administration, not the other way around.
You recognize that as it relates to prior administrations, the president's predecessor, President Obama, President George W. Bush, I've been here long enough to have covered President Bill Clinton, this is not the norm.
And John Decker is right. According to the New York Times, Donald Trump held 39 news conferences during his first 2 years. Barack Obama held 46. Biden has held 20. And laughably, Karine Jean-Pierre made the following claim.
So I'll say this, it is also unprecedented that a president takes as many shouted questions as this president has, and he has.
I know the last
Okay.
administration, I'll tell you, almost every day on this
Okay,
building.
well, we'll certainly get the data and share that with all of you.
But if you know anything about President Trump, you would know that despite calling them the enemy of the people, yes, he would take shouted questions from the press corps almost every day. In comparison, Joe Biden is notorious for his ability to ignore the press.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. That's enough. Thank you guys. That's a wrap. Thank you all.
Have a reaction. Mr. President, and did you know about it in advance? There's walking from Brian, Mr. President. Let's go. Thanks, guys.
What's your message to North Korea?
And in another poor attempt at gaslighting, Ben LaBolt, the White House communications director, told the New York Times President Biden has held nearly 400 question and answer sessions with reporters since he took office. That is more than Mr. Trump, Mr. Obama, or George W. Bush did during similar periods in their presidencies. Now, let's watch an example of what Ben LaBolt considers a Q&A session.
I'm not taking any questions right now. Thank you very much.
Can you say when you expect prices to get back to normal, Mr. President?
I hope by the end of next year we're much closer, but I can't make that prediction. I'm convinced they're not going to go up. I'm convinced they're going to continue from there.
Okay, goodbye then. More than any president in recent memory, Mr. Biden, 80, has taken steps to reduce opportunities for journalists to question him in forums where he can offer unscripted answers and they can follow up.
Now, I'm supposed to stop and walk out of the room here.
The result, critics say, is a president who has fewer moments of public accountability for his comments, decisions, and actions.
Plenty of time to talk to you later. Thank you.
And other leaders, when will you answer our questions, sir?
And we've all heard the Biden administration's empty talk about transparency and the freedom of the press. But watch Joe Biden during his appearance at the White House Press Correspondents' Dinner, where he basically gave the press the middle finger.
In a lot of ways, this dinner sums up my first 2 years in office. I'll talk for 10 minutes, take 0 questions, and cheerfully walk away.
And it's funny because it's true, right, mainstream media? Anyway, that's it for now. Please check out these videos that you probably missed. Follow me on Twitter at Don'tWalkRun. And as always, thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you next time. If there is next time.